Hi, I'm Dr. Charles Richardson, President and CEO of TransWorld Kidney Corporation. In the next few minutes, you're going to watch a video about post-operative management of kidney transplanted patients and how TransWorld Kidney Corporation will impact the procedures and extend those patients' lives.
Hi, I'm Rusty Wallace, and you're watching this video because you care about the fight against kidney disease in America. That's the reason I'm so enthusiastic about TransWorld Kidney and finding treatment for kids and adults with kidney disease. About 20 million people are affected by kidney disease, and this year alone, about 60,000 are going to die.
In a manner of speaking, it was kind of a combination of a number of factors. I was a diabetic, an insulin-dependent diabetic for many years who unfortunately didn't take care of himself all that well.
I was only born with one kidney. It started out as I was just tired all the time. Went and had a normal physical done and found my creatinine was high. Went to my nephrologist, and one thing led to another after an ultrasound and a CAT scan. I was only born with one kidney, and the one I had just wasn't all that great.
I started to see a nephrologist. The nephrologist determined that I also had lupus. And kind of coupled with all of that, I had high blood pressure. So I tend to think that the three of those things, the lupus, certainly the diabetes, and the high blood pressure, just kind of converged to eventually cause the kidneys to fail.
The most common cause of chronic kidney disease is diabetes. High blood pressure is the second most common cause. A lot of patients have both conditions.
We did everything we could to avoid dialysis. Treatments. One day I was at work and just was very sick, throwing up. Doctor took me in and said, "Milton, unfortunately, we're going to have to start dialysis." So I actually dialysis, and after about 3 months then qualified for or began to investigate transplant.
Obviously, individuals with end-stage renal disease whose kidney function basically is destroyed need dialysis to stay alive. Dialysis is a good procedure, but it's associated with its own troubles and difficulties.
The ideal situation in my mind is to get somebody transplanted before they ever have to go on dialysis.
Solid organ transplantation in general is a challenging procedure, but many strides have been made, creating great success.
If you look at a 40-year-old person, dialysis versus transplantation, and you look at life tables, transplantation confers about a 20-year survival advantage for the individual. In fact, on average, if you're 40 and you're on dialysis, you're going to live about another 8 years. If you get a transplant, on average, you'll make it to about 68.
There's about 74,000 people waiting for a kidney transplant in the U.S. right now. Unfortunately, about 17 die every day waiting.
If an individual is fortunate enough to get a donor, either a living related donor or a brain-dead solid organ donor, dramatic changes occur in their lifestyle. Unfortunately, though, they need a lot of care.
And as soon as you come out of the hospital, the first week, every day you go back and have your blood work done. Then after the first week, then it's once a week. And then you do that for a month, and then it's once a month for, I think it was like 6 months. And now I'm down to just once a year I go back.
The normal way they do things currently is they're looking at creatinine levels. And if your creatinine goes up to 2, then they start to say, well, you've got kidney failure. But that's kind of it's kind of down the urinative tract that something's already happened with the kidney before you're seeing your creatinine levels change. So this would actually be a way to predict kidney failure, we believe. We've got to do our testing and make sure, but we believe that looking at the electrical changes in a kidney will happen before you see creatinine levels change.
Initially, immediately after the transplant, I actually remained in Charleston for about 2 weeks after the transplant so that they could make sure my levels were at a point that they felt was safe. And when I mean safe, that I wasn't experiencing any rejection, things of that nature. After they finally released me to come home to Columbia, I probably traveled to Charleston at least once a month, maybe even a little more, just to have the levels checked and to make sure that I was going into the hospital, making sure that the kidney and pancreas were working correctly.
Just to prevent rejection, when I first came out of the hospital, I was on 3 different medications.
There are lots and lots of medicines that transplant patients that are required, because of course I've got to take my anti-rejection drugs, generally 2 dosages a day, in order for the organs to remain functioning. And I'll take those medicines for the life of the organ. So that can get to be extremely expensive.
I want to say that everything I was on when I first came out, just for the immune suppressants, if you had to just go and pay for it, was over $3,000 a month.
Of course, going back and forth to Charleston, aside from the medical care, that's expensive as well. I've got gasoline, I've got the time it takes. Of course, if I actually have to stay in Charleston overnight because there's some problem with the blood levels, all of those things are costly.
Particularly important is managing the drugs necessary to control rejection, one of the prime elements of managing any transplant patient. Rejection is something inherent to the process of transplantation. We don't like tissue coming from other individuals. We have good drugs. Success rates are high. However, patients need to be followed extremely closely with primarily blood work after a kidney transplant, and oftentimes with kidney biopsies.
The biopsy itself is not a real painful event, let's say. It's not real pleasant either. It does hurt a bit.
I mean, to look at it and to tell you what they do, it'll scare most people, because it's a needle and a spring-loaded plunger. They actually take and skim the outside of the kidney. The biopsy doesn't, you don't go in the center of it. You skim the outside edge, and that's why they have to be kind of picky where they do it. But it's a spring-loaded needle, and he mashes a lever, and as soon as he mashes it, the needle goes in, grabs the hunk, and pulls it all back out in less than a second.
Damage to the transplanted organ, and particularly damage to the transplanted organ that can result in bleeding. This can be a devastating complication and create significant problems, even sometimes problems great enough that causes loss of the transplanted organ.
A way to monitor blood levels, whether the organs are functioning properly from home, as opposed to having to go either to a laboratory to get blood drawn and then of course having that sent to Charleston, or instead of having to actually go to Charleston. I think that'd be great, just to put it plainly.
The biopsy, which is the most sensitive and specific way to look at rejection, just can't be done very frequently. So alternative methods of following kidney transplant patients, or any solid organ transplant patients, has been a holy grail for a long time. How to develop a system that can monitor the patient, monitor the organ that's been transplanted, so that adjustments can be made in their medications, is a challenge.
At the time of transplantation, a device called the sidekick is inserted into the abdomen and leads are sutured to the kidney. The sidekick then begins gathering information and measuring the electrical impedance in the kidney. This data is then transmitted and read outside the body by a handheld Bluetooth-equipped device. The gathered data is wirelessly sent to a computer in the home and transmitted via the internet to a central monitoring station every minute of the day, 24 hours a day, where medical professionals will interpret the data and take appropriate action if necessary.
So any kind of monitoring that you could actually do at home or even closer to home would be a welcomed benefit, I'd say.
There's not a real-time monitor of a kidney transplanted patient. This is the only real-time monitor that exists with our technology, to monitor them from home without having to go do all that creatinine levels, without the biopsies. It's just much better for the patient's quality of life, and also for checking to make sure nothing's going on with the patient. You know, they may be 3 months out between actually seeing a physician and something, you know, they go from acute, they have acute rejection or a severe rejection, and we don't realize that they're even having those problems. So having this device implanted and monitoring them from 24/7 from their home, I think is important.
If you can eliminate either scheduled routine biopsies or ad hoc biopsies and get better information other ways, everyone is benefited.
No more travel to the hospital. No more invasion into the body. Significantly less complications at a fraction of the cost. The Sidekick truly is tomorrow's medical innovation today.